Well, real quick, I've got the 2 minutes. I'm super curious, is anyone here polyamorous? Ah, okay, cool. All right, we're gonna have a few people already aware. All right, awesome. And then, well, I hope that for those of you who are not, you're gonna at least learn something. And who was just in Daryl's talk? David, I know you were, okay. All right, well, he stole my talk, so a lot of what he said I'm gonna repeat, but it's worth repeating. So it's 5:30. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get into it. I'll have this right here. You can come up and scan. You can also scan this right here. This is going to take you to a Google Doc that I have made that has compiled resources, content creators, websites, book recommendations. All of my contact links are in there. So I'll leave that up for just a second. But again, if you need to pull that back up, I have this here. You're welcome to scan it. Okay. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and get into it because it's a lot to cover. So what is monogamy? Most of us know what monogamy, or rather exclusivity, is, but where did it start? Have we always been monogamous as a species? Is it natural for us? The obvious answer is no, because the amount of people out there who are truly monogamous, as in they have only ever sexually and romantically been involved with one singular person until they die, is almost incontestable, right? Most people practice, or claim to practice, more on that in a minute, exclusivity. That is having one singular sexual mate at a time. What is love? Social psychologist Robert Friedrichsen's definition of love is an interpersonally situated experience marked by momentary increases in shared positive emotions, biobehavioral synchrony, and mutual care, which over time builds embodied rapport, social bonds, and commitment. So, a lecture about the history of monogamy is something vitally important for the understanding of sexuality and relationships, and I really wish, sorry, I realized I needed to stay on this slide at the time, and I really wish I could pair this lecture with historians and anthropologists far more qualified than I to expound upon this concept. I'm going to do my best to get a TLDR on the cultural phenomenon. So, in our early days of evolutionary days of hunter-gatherers, and indeed until the advent of DNA testing, paternity could never truly be confirmed. As roaming nomadic groups, we shared resources and familial care. And with the advent of agriculture, humans were suddenly stationary in creating private property and resources to be owned and controlled. To secure continuing farm workers and an inheritance of these resources necessary for survival, controlling women's sexuality to determine paternity came into being. Again, please note, I am not a historian or an anthropologist. This is simply the accepted prevailing theory from the empirical evidence that we have. The establishment of the church and its subsequent influence on Western thought and morality and female sexuality cannot be understated. Today, our definition of a normal relationship is the result of 1,000 years of cultural development and socialization favoring monogamy, heterosexuality, and sex-negative principles. To clarify, my point is that not that if after this talk, if you choose to be monogamous, that you're adhering to a patriarchal oppressive structure that eons-old misogynists made up to control women. I will continue to expound on this throughout this lecture, but my goal is to empower you to be making conscious and enthusiastic choices about your relationships, and not just to do the default because that's how it's supposed to be, or that there are consequences for not doing so. I also want to empower you with the motivation to build strong communities, and I'll go into depth later on what that means. So every time I get this talk, I take care to build emotional space for the audience. And what I mean by that is polyamory is an extremely charged topic for a great many people. And speaking about this concept gets people heated. It's really exciting to present NaNoCon, as this is a space where people have signed up to be open about learning new things and fighting Christian nationalism and all that encompasses in general. That being said, there are still some caveats that I would like to quickly go over. First, I hope everyone is here with an open mind and an open heart. My talk is going to cover concepts that, for some of you, may be your first time being introduced to it, and it can be a lot to process. This really is a judgment-free space. This subject can trigger feelings of anxiety and anger if you've been a victim of infidelity or cheating. Please take the space for yourself if you need. If you find yourself too triggered to be receptive, take a heart. There's no shame in walking away and just holding emotional space for yourself. Polyamory is seen as a threat by so many because love is seen as a finite resource to be controlled. We depend on love because we need someone to support us, cuddle, have sex, share resources and finances, raise our children, have our back, be our best friend, distilling community into a single person. And the idea of somebody else tapping in to that finite resource is a foundational security threat. Problem is that people are not property, and love is not a limited resource, and there is no singular replacement for the intrinsic human need to have a robust community. And the capacity to give and receive love is infinite and abundant. So, and I'm sorry that I wish I had a projector, I just got my little CD. I'm going to discuss my lifestyle of multiple romantic and sexual relationships, and for some of you, this may be frustrating if you're struggling to maintain any relationship connections at all. Or maybe you've been in a relationship with someone and they wanted to change the dynamic from being exclusive to open and you didn't want to do that. What I am not going to tell you, I am not going to tell you that polyamory is the right way of doing relationships or that there's anything wrong with being exclusive or it's inferior in any way. This is simply going to be a discussion of what I've learned deconstructing monogamy, concepts about exclusivity versus openness, and why polyamory works for me. I'm also going to challenge deeply held beliefs that likely many of you are still holding on to that directly stem from religion and purity culture. Regardless of whether you decide to remain exclusive after this lecture, there are important concepts for you to deconstruct. So I got to go over some definitions, and while some of these may be concepts you've heard about, I need to go over some just for posterity. And this is, again, not a comprehensive list. And for those of you who came in a little later, this is a QR code I have to scan. This will take you to a Google Doc, and the first link in that Google Doc is a glossary. So monogamy, the practice of maintaining a romantic and sexual relationship with one person at a time. Remember, that just means exclusive, monogamous, exclusive. Polyamory, the practice of engaging in romantic and or sexual relationships with multiple people with the enthusiastic consent of everyone involved. Polyamory is also called ethical non-monogamy, ENM, or consensual non-monogamy, CSM. So if you hear me say ENM, that's the umbrella term of what I mean. Attachment styles. You will hear me reference attachment styles, specifically secure attachment, throughout this talk. Attachment theory is a psychological, evolutionary, and ethological theory concerning relationships between humans. Learning about attachment styles is an entirely separate discussion. I have some resources to recommend, again, books in that Google Doc, but the very simplified gist is that I grew up in a secure environment and with supportive parents, thanks Mom, and that reflects on my ability to create and maintain healthy relationships. Compersion, this is like the darling word of the polyamory movement. This is sometimes described as the opposite of jealousy. Compersion is the feeling of joy and happiness in witnessing and hearing about a partner's attraction, love, and experiences with another person. For example, my partner Nick had a great date with his partner Ashley, and it made me so happy to hear they had a wonderful time together. It's basically just you're happy that somebody else is happy, but it's specifically about you're happy that your romantic partner is happy with somebody else. There are, again, a ton more definitions to know. Polyamorous people are big nerds, and we love our words, so there's a glossary that could go. What polyamory is not, and you're going to see lots more Star Trek memes. So if you like Star Trek, I made this meme. So if you're at our top is the Mormon cult, boo, and the bottom is the polyamorous group, yay. So what polyamory is not polygamy. Polygamy is the practice of having more than one wife or husband at a time. But in all practicality, it's the practice of men having multiple wives. And it comes from high control religions and cults, Mormonism being the one people are most likely familiar with. Because of the global patriarchy, the freedom for women to have the sexual agency and power to openly and safely choose multiple partners is not common practice, but it is growing in the Western world. Polyamory is not cheating or infidelity. The distinction is the knowledge and enthusiastic consent of everyone involved. So, and then this is, I made this meme again. These are all things that people think that it's just cheating and we aren't loyal and it's a scam and blah, blah, blah. So, okay. Many monogamous people rely on the structure of a relationship to prove commitment instead of actually doing the meaningful work to stay emotionally attuned to their partner. Caring about someone's well-being, their joy and happiness, showing up in times of need, celebrating their achievements, none of those things require monogamy. Skills that are necessary for secure and healthy E&M relationships apply to a monogamous life. For example, the concept of the check-in. It is important for all relationship dynamics to engage with this, and it is essential to healthy polyamorous dynamic. Check-ins are ongoing discussions on your emotional health, needs, desires, expectations, boundaries, etc. with your partners. And too often, people in exclusive relationships skip this step, again, depending on the exclusivity of the relationship to prove commitment. This is also why if you struggle with identifying and expressing your feelings, this can create a foundation of problems in any relationship. More skills required for E&M that will improve your relationship of any dynamic, friends, family, partners, coworkers, etc. Emotional regulation, collaborative problem solving, education on attachment styles, robust knowledge of boundaries and expectations of everyone involved, humility and willingness to admit fault and take accountability, intense self-reflection and introspection, the ability to express your needs, your desires, your expectations, and on that, the ability to reflect on which of those are reasonable. Somebody with an anxiety brain, sometimes we think things that are not reasonable, and healthy and come from a place of security. And when feeling jealousy, reflecting on the origin of the emotion and discerning if it is stemming from an unmet need. Again, these skills are vital for all healthy social relationships, and I'm going to get more into community building and the impact of social intimacy in a bit. So, when I speak about toxic and unethical monogamy, what do I mean by that? So, this is not a comprehensive list. The normalization of jealousy as an indicator of love, and it is profound how ubiquitous this is in all media, all songs. I mean, we romanticize it to the point where somebody kills someone or someone else, but how romantic! It's terrifying and awful and gross. So the idea that a sufficiently intense love is enough to overcome any practical incompatibilities. I want kids, I don't. It's just going to work out. It's not going to work out. The idea that you should meet your partner's every need, and if you don't, you're either inadequate or there to be. The idea that a sufficiently intense love should cause you to cease to be attracted to anyone else for the entirety of the time that you're with them. The idea that commitment is synonymous with exclusivity. The idea that marriage and children are the only valid teleological justifications for being committed to a relationship. The idea that your insecurities are always your partner's responsibility to tiptoe around and never your responsibility to work on. The idea that your value to a partner is directly proportional to the amount of time and energy they spend on you, and it is in zero-sum competition with everything else they value in life. The idea that being of value to a partner should always make up a large chunk of how you value yourself. And the last one I don't have on there, that's my own, is the idea that you cannot have intimacy or deep connections with the gender that you were attracted to unless it is your significant other. Otherwise, it's known as emotional cheating, which, So toxic monogamy and misogyny are also deeply linked. When I mentioned the first one as jealousy is an indicator of love, we see that violence against women is romanticized and seen as another indicator of affection. And this starts really early in childhood, when boys push you down in the playground and pull your hair and rub dirt in your face. It's because he likes you. And then there's the link between toxic monogamy and religion, and then by extension, capitalism, because monocentric culture encourages people to see themselves as half of one whole and complete themselves through a monogamous relationship. Capitalism wants you to be as independent and individual as possible because the less resources you share with others, the more of a productive consumer you are. So back to that all-consuming question about polyamory, once people know what it is, which is how the hell does that work? And how can you possibly love more than one person? Have sex with someone who's not your spouse? Well, on that, many people already know the answer to this question. What they're asking is how do you do it openly and with consent? Sexologist and researcher Alfred Kinsey did a study on affairs and found that 50% of all men and 6% of all women had engaged in extramarital affairs. And this research was done in the 50s. Obviously, our culture has changed drastically since then. And for the majority of people listening to this lecture right now, you have either been cheated on or have cheated. Many of you do know what it is to desire and engage with somebody else while still caring for your other partner. This anxiety and fear response to an open relationship dynamic goes back to the concept that love is a finite resource and that we can't allow anyone else to tap into our supply, and that we perceive our partner desiring anyone else as a reflection of our own value. That is, it is a threat to your worth, your desirability, your very identity. So much of heteromonogamy is linked to fears around social status, because if you are only allowed to love one person, then you better look good, have money, and mask who you really are, and possibly stay trapped and miserable because the resources are limited. This is one of the primary driving reasons behind the very specific bullying polyamorous phenomenon that polyamorous people face, which is the stereotype that we're all ugly or physically unattractive. And this has a lot to do with the fact that cishet culture, cisgender heterosexual culture, is deeply homophobic and has disgust reactions to anyone who is visibly queer, which the polyamorous community is heavily LGBTQ+. And yes, in case you weren't aware, this is a widespread phenomenon. I've already said this for multiple topics, but a lecture on pretty privilege and social status for perceived conventional attractiveness is an entire topic on its own. Again, it really is. There are lots of people, polyamorous people are unfuckable. It's like, well, clearly not. You know, I'm doing better than you. So let's, this is a short little thing about codependency. If for anybody who can't read what it says, it's an unhealthy obsession with the relationship, lack of identity without them, overwhelming fear of being abandoned, struggling to identify your emotions, being heavily reliant on the other person to feel good about yourself, and doing anything for them, ignoring your own needs in order to be loved and chosen. So let's deconstruct the idea that I'm half of one whole. I am a whole person on my own. A relationship does not complete me. Learning to be happy and safe with yourself and your inner world is foundational to being in secure E&M. Most of us are familiar with the idea that we are somehow incomplete on our own, as religion tells us that explicitly, that in order to be satisfied and fulfilled, we have to have a relationship with God. We still hold on to a shocking amount of this codependency in relationships, and we struggle to recognize the value of our independent selves even after leaving religion. And this is especially true for women, as independence within religion is not embraced and downright denigrated. We have to find a man for us to be complete, and we extend these ideas to sexuality. A commonly expressed yet utterly delusional sentiment is that if you find the right person, your soulmate, if you will, that this magical process happens to you where you will just cease to be attracted to anybody else. That somehow your human desires just vaporize. To quote The Ethical Select, which is a book in the list, a wedding ring around the finger does not cause a nerve block to the genitals. My journey into polyamory reflects the sensations of leaving religion for me. In the same vein, when I was an exclusive person, had you approached me about this relationship dynamic, it would have been unfathomable to me. When I was a believer, atheism was incomprehensible to me, and an important piece of both of these journeys is the sheer time that they stretched over. These were slow processes for me, which was helpful as it gave me so much time to process at my own pace and get more comfortable with different aspects of it. It takes a lot of time and work to deconstruct such deeply held ideas and default cultural scripts. So I want to talk about the concept of a relationship escalator. And this was first coined by Amy Moran. And essentially, We flirt so that we can start dating, so that we can have sex, so that we can move in, so that we can marry, have kids, and then death to us part. And that is the path in which you take. And if you don't get married, what's the point of a relationship? If you're not dating to marry, you're just wasting your time. And this is such a fundamental disservice to the community and intimacy we have with others. We don't structure friendships like this, yet we impose these narrow and limiting parameters to romantic and sexual relationships. When you break free of the relationship escalator, you realize your entire world opens up to new possibilities. You can see people for who they are and meet them where they're at. The obsession with finding the perfect person, your soulmate, can be as fruitless as it is frustrating, because people are not concepts to be perfect for you. And if you find someone who doesn't check every box, you don't have to mold them to force them to be something they're not. So much of polyamory is letting things happen organically and having relationships that evolve and adjust to everyone's needs at the time. None of us are static. We all change over time. The kind of person you are at 20 is vastly different at 30. Your needs and desires are going to be different throughout your life. Another element to the relationship escalator is the concept of successful relationships. Again, Daryl, you stole my entire talk before mine. We see any partnership that ends in breakup or divorce as a failure. And what is the metric of success for a relationship? That you're just together until you die, and anything less than that means that you failed? So I encourage all to either take a picture of this or write it down. If you can't read it, I'm just going to read it for you. So on the left side, it says intimacy, foreplay, sex. And on the right side, it says also intimacy. Intellectual dialogue, sharing joy, fears, and shame, exploring creative passions and hobbies, mutual vulnerability, hugging and cuddling, discussing the sense of purpose and values, space for difficult conversations, and communicating expectations. And deconstructing what intimacy meant for me was one of the biggest emotional changes in my life. So remember how I said, I hope you're here with an open heart, an open mind. This really applies for the next bit. For me, after having experiences with my other partners, whether it's a romantic date somewhere or a trip or just sex, I feel more connected and satisfied with all of my relationships as a whole. My sexual satisfaction is much higher when I engage with others because my general sexual stimulation is much higher. I realize that the reason I feel more in love and more connected while having a relationship with others is that I am empowered to exercise my own choice and agency. Having more independence and being trusted makes me feel more secure in my relationships. It's the opposite of resentment. Polyamory for me is a liberation. It's not just I get to do whatever I want whenever I want to, although I kind of do. I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to each of my partners, just like what people are familiar with in exclusive relationships. My secure attachments are commitments to make space, to be there when your partners need you, make time, emotional labor, interpersonal check-ins constantly, etc. Purity culture also greatly influences our relationship dynamics, even when we think we've deconstructed harm. This is especially true for when it comes to open and positive sexuality. Deconstructing purity culture is vital for any healthy and secure sex life, regardless of exclusivity or number of partners. We know that shame and guilt poisons even natural and healthy masturbation habits. Women are so aggressively shamed and punished for desiring sex to the point that there is an accepted cultural attitude that women simply don't desire sex that much. And if we do, there's something wrong with us. Remember that this misogyny started with a very specific purpose: controlling women's sexuality. Because if she is shamed into not being with anyone else but one man, you know exactly where those babies came from. This isn't going to be successful with just a blanket decree from the prevailing authority of the church. It relies on deeply ingrained cultural attitudes about women. So, and again, funny meme, and it's a sentiment we hear. If you've been polyamorous so long, why didn't you try it earlier? I just didn't know that I could do that. So I want to talk about queer identity being validated through E&M. So as a bisexual or pansexual woman, E&M allows for fulfillment of my sexual orientation. There's a reason why the queer community has been practicing polyamory and non-conforming relationship dynamics for a long time. Any queer trans person has already had to deconstruct so much about themselves, what they want, what makes them happy, how to structure their life for maximum fulfillment and joy, and embracing these things despite any social stigma. I'm also in the kink community, which is another big factor as to why a polyamorous lifestyle works out so well for me. I have different kinds of sex with different kinds of people, and they're all satisfying, wonderful in their own ways, but the variety is truly something that creates fulfillment for me. My intellectual interests are also broad, so it goes to reason my partners would be as well. I get a profound variety of emotional and intellectual stimulation from my partners. My fiance was not raised religious. Another one of my partners is ex-fundamentalist. So when somebody like John 3:16 and we stare at each other like, oh, we know, but that's not something that I can relate to with all of my partners. And that type of need is so important for me to be able to get through of being with somebody who understands what it's like. And what am I going to do? Make my fiance go back in time to be indoctrinated so he's going to understand what I'm talking about when I say I'm traumatized by vacation Bible school? My local kink community is also deeply queer and gender non-conforming, which works to contribute to a safer and more positive space. So I mentioned conversion. I'm going to read this out. I used to think polyamorous people had a superpower that I just didn't possess. Now I understand that they're just people willing to look their jealousy and insecurity in the eyes with compassion and curiosity instead of shame. And honestly, that's way more badass. And then I made a little SpongeBob meme. So conversion is a skill that we can learn. With work, you can switch your emotional response from jealousy to conversion. I'm not going to go into the psychological and emotional process for this. It's far too lengthy for this talk. But again, in that Google Doc Drive, I have books that go over that. So a quick example of how this is possible, the switching, is that, an example is that my hot take is that I think that classic relationship jealousy is a response from social conditioning and not something we naturally feel. And why I feel this is, a lot of us were raised super religious, and we remember feeling a disgust response to seeing queer people. Like, if you saw two men kissing, you're religious, you probably went, ew, gross. And you don't feel that way anymore, do you? It's just an example of, over time, you switch your emotional response, and I do believe that the same thing can happen with relationship jealousy. So, and that's also the queer-phobic response is, a lot of like fundies say that that's an inherent reason as to why it's fundamentally wrong, or that it's inherently wrong, is because we're just ingrained to have this response, but we know that that's not true. So, back to this again. I'm going to talk about the feminist perspective of polyamory. So, E&M provides women with more choice and agency, which is a threat to the patriarchy. Think of the constant and ubiquitous narratives about female sexuality and gendered relationship paradigms. Women are viciously demonized for having sexual agency, and we are told we need to be caretakers for our singular male partner and the children we are supposed to have. To engage in any relationship dynamic where women are making active choices to their sexual partners is to inherently go against a status quo that has aggressively asserted itself. In recent years, we've seen profound organized efforts to control women's sexuality, our bodies, and reproductive health for all AFABs. The contemporary polyamorous movement is also led by women. The majority of all the well-regarded and most prolific books on the subject are all written by women. All the dominant websites and major content creators are women. And a factor as to why is that women historically do the emotional labor required to maintain interpersonal relationships. We have the social conditioning and gendered cultural training to establish and maintain the emotional depth that secure relationships require. As the patriarchy continues to be challenged, more men are given the space to explore these aspects of themselves and their inner emotional states and needs, priming them to have more secure attachments. This is also why the polyamorous community is by and large leftist and progressive, because I want to put this on a billboard. Any dynamic of women openly choosing multiple partners, especially multiple men, is incompatible with toxic masculinity and misogyny, because those concepts are foundationally rooted in the control and submission of women. In order for me to form an attachment with a male partner, whether secure or just casual, they have to respect my independence and agency and not just have an understanding of these concepts, but truly embrace them. For myself and pretty much most of the women I know in the community, if any indication of jealousy, entitlement, controlling behavior, or slut-shaming misogyny arises, then the connection is severed. I clarify this feminist perspective because there's this cultural judgment and general idea that polyamory was just made up by men who want to sleep with a bunch of women. Again, focusing on male sex drive and not female sex drive. So Jennifer Winston put this best in her book, and I'm just going to read the whole quote. It's so good. One of the main reasons that these movements are perceived as threatening is because they fundamentally challenge long-held views on sex. The belief that sex should only be for purposes of procreation is a driving force behind maintaining a rigidly gender-divided and sex-negative culture. To recognize things such as homosexual attraction and love, the desire for multiple partners, or the fluidity of gender itself is to acknowledge that sex is more than just body parts and reproduction. For hundreds of years, the Puritan undercurrent of American culture has taken major issue with pleasure. There's a collective neurosis surrounding pleasure, and it is fundamentally believed that pleasure cannot be had for pleasure's sake. Instead, it must either serve some kind of purpose, such as producing children, or be earned through some amount of suffering. No cupcake until you've had your time in the gym that day. To indulge in pleasure for its own sake, especially sexual pleasure, is still a basis for condemnation and judgment. From the outside, having multiple partners appears shamelessly indulgent, and as polyamorous in particular are often criticized as being selfish. As critics of poly often say, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And to that I say, watch. So I want to emphasize the unrealistic expectation of one person fulfilling all of your needs. This is especially powerful if you don't cultivate friendships and community outside of your partner. This is a recognized phenomenon, especially among men. I highly recommend the podcast, The Lonely American Man. Again, it's in that Google Doc thing that I made. It was produced for Hidden Brain, by Hidden Brain for NPR. And I'm about to get into a lot of the data that was shared from it. It's easy to see why resentment and dissatisfaction would be so high among women in exclusive heterosexual marriages. Women are expected to do the labor of an entire village. Polyamory appeals to me because my male partners are supported by multiple people. I'm not expected to do the emotional labor for one person. So I have a question for all of you, but this is especially targeted towards men. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you're sick or afraid, do you have someone in your life that you can call, not your girlfriend or your wife? This specific question has been asked as part of a research study that has been going on for almost 100 years. The toll of social isolation is profound, and the impact that strong community bonds has on not just our emotional health, but our physical health is staggering. An analysis of nearly 150 studies has found that people with strong social relationships had about a 50% lower mortality risk than those with weaker ties. Psychologist Julianne Holt-Lundstad and her co-authors concluded that those with weaker social relationships had a greater risk of death than people who were physically inactive and obese. Let's think about this another way. Spending time building and nurturing your friendships might be just as important to your health as eating right and exercising. What can you provide to community? Are you good at cooking? Do you have some basic auto skills? I don't. Are you a great organizer? And what can you receive from community? What areas of your life are lacking? I know it's scary to be open and vulnerable to others. We also genuinely romanticize being a hermit after the pandemic more than ever. We love canceling plans, hating people, staying inside, and being alone. And I get it, because that place is safe, and it's familiar, and it's comfortable, and it's static, and you are in control of that space. And socialization can feel like being on, feels like you're performing. But I argue that that's not natural. We weren't always like this. Up until the last century or so, the idea of just two people sharing an entire household was unheard of, let alone just one. And I know I sound like a damn dirty commune hippie by saying that there is so much joy in the pedantic. My extended polycule, this is just a very brief snapshot of them, tries to get together once a week to watch silly old sci-fi and grindhouse movies, and we kind of, if you ever watch Mystery Science Theater 3000, essentially what we do. We do that once a week. It's really awesome. It can be up to 15 people, at most 20, probably average around 10. 3 of my partners are in this picture. We update on our lives, we cuddle, we laugh, we wash the dishes, and we share snacks. We talk to the little ones before they're put to bed, admiring new drawings and ideas. I know we're so fucking tired of hearing it, and even more tired of living it, but we are living in harrowing and unprecedented times. The time to build a community is paramount. It takes fucking work. We wallow in the relief of canceled plans like pigs and shit. And I suggest it is a different sensation when these social plans are in households and not at a restaurant or a bar. 1, you save money and obvious need now. And 2, again, there's intimacy to have in a home space. Sharing a meal together is one of the most archaic and foundational aspects of humanity. And doing it regularly creates rapport that isn't something that just happens after one or even a couple of times. We've been doing this movie night for years now, and I can't describe the sensation of just calm social stimulation that we get once a week and hang out. It's really transcendent, and it's changed my life. And I know it's frustrating for all the introverts here to listen to an extrovert tell them to just go be social. I'm sorry. But do you want community, a safety network, friends that you can depend upon for mutual aid, emotional support, and joy? It takes work, and it's not going to be hand-delivered to you. You can't lament on having no community if you've made absolutely no effort to join one or curate it yourself. They take labor. And let's face it, even if there was a fantasy scenario where someone shows up to your door with this community structure, gift wrapped, delivered, would you open the door? Does that look like hosting dinners, or making a dish to bring, or picking something pre-made up on the way, or quietly washing dishes without being asked? You can sit in silence. You can be open with your community that you don't vocalize that much, and that socializing isn't in your wheelhouse of strengths. Getting away from phone screens and showing up still matters. This concept is not going to work if you still have this oppressive belief that you can't have friends of the gender that you were attracted to, or that intimacy is only something reserved for your significant other. And yes, despite being such an aggressive and enlightened crowd here, I guarantee you there are still some of you struggling with this to the point where you feel anxiety and insecurity if your partner even likes somebody else's Instagram photo. I've also lost a lot of male friends who their girlfriends forced them to remove me from their life because they were insecure about it. That sucks. I love this meme. Listen, if there's no queer artistic nerds, I'm not going. The more my social community became more refined, and I curated a group that was engaged, compassionate, leftist, community-oriented, etc., the more comfortable I felt exploring my sexuality in an open way. I'm in a social group that is by and large not dictated by jealousy, entitlement, purity culture, insecurities, or just weirdness about sex in general. When you are in a space without shame and guilt, you can explore ideas about yourself. Dr. Ray and I both agree that this specific concept is why it's really important to just check out a BDSM event at some point. Even if you have no desire or intention of participating, simply existing in a space where others are engaging in sexuality without guilt or shame, unless they want that time, can be a life-changing experience. Polyamory in the kink scene is liberating for me because I'm free to explore myself both physically and emotionally with others without the cultural hangups of purity culture and toxic monogamy. So, I love it. Deep Space Nine, it's great. So if after everything I've said, you are interested in exploring polyamory, you can feel incredible pressure when engaging in a lifestyle or ideology that goes against the community or cultural norms. And we know this here, as most of us come from high control religions into secularism. In the same vein of judgment that we experience as those who have rejected religion, going against the cultural norm of monogamy can generate intense feelings of being judged and watched. While the availability of resources is changing, you are entering a relationship structure for which there is little to no positive representation in media, as well as minimal support in general. Just like losing your faith in a highly religious environment, this can generate intense feelings of isolation, loss, and frustration. Similarly, when you experience positive E&M, you will likely want to share and discuss these experiences with others, but find that community support is minimal and feel like there is no one to talk to save for online spaces. The social stigma against polyamory can be extremely high, just like deconstructing religion. I really want to emphasize this point because I want any of you to be prepared should you choose to explore this relationship dynamic. Many are disgusted and judgmental, but there are not an insignificant amount of people that are downright hostile and angry. The amount of dismissiveness is staggering. That won't last. You're not in a real relationship. You don't know what commitment is. You're just single with extra steps to feel special, and you are a whore. There are literally communities across social media dedicated to cyberbullying polyamorous people, Facebook groups, TikTok accounts, Discord servers, and YouTubers. People can and have been fired for being polyamorous. And again, as a woman, there are massive extra layers to judgment and shaming. You can be a woman who's never even kissed anyone, and if you have the audacity to suggest that virginity is a social construct, get ready for the barrage of men foaming at the mouth to tell you you were a slut. Internalized misogyny is also very real, and many women participate in the shaming of female sexuality. And on the other side, there's also a ton of social media groups managed by polyamorous people that's all about cis-het couples looking for a third, which is known as unicorn hunting, and it is also very gross. Unicorn hunting in the context of open relationships refers to when a couple is seeking a bisexual woman to join their relationship with the expectation that she will participate in threesomes and date both members of the couple simultaneously. Treating a woman like a sexual and emotional accessory is profoundly unethical and fetishizes bisexual women. Unfortunately, unicorn hunting is super common, especially with cishet couples that are just opening up their relationship. All that toxic monogamy stuff I spoke about deconstructing are still foundational pillars for these people. So please be aware, if you're a single woman and thinking about joining polyam spaces, it's just something to be aware of. Anytime you're exploring alternative sexual spaces, polyamorous communities, BDSM dungeons, swinger clubs, and you are a minority in some way, transgender, a person of color, there can be people that will fetishize you. There are many steps and important things to consider before exploring E&M. Arguably, the most important is that you need to decide why you want to be in an ethical non-monogamous relationship. Opening your relationship or becoming polyamorous because your current partner wants to, in some attempt to save or spice up your current relationship, generally does not go well. Just like monogamy, there will be difficulties and hardships, and you will experience heartbreak and make mistakes and be forced to face your deepest insecurities. For some people, they take to E&M like a duck to water, and others have a much more arduous journey of confronting and working through their insecurities and doing the inner work to be supportive and healthy individual, both for themselves and for their partners. And this is a great meme from What We Do in the Shadows. It's one of my favorite shows. Dudes, online dating doesn't work, their profile. I am looking for someone to have intercourse with and maybe some light housekeeping. So really, seriously, such a funny job. And another point I want to acknowledge is the uphill battle you are going to face if you are a cis straight man interested in being polyamorous, and there are several reasons why. Regardless of your own personal home life and how you were raised, you exist in a patriarchal social structure. This is true around the globe. Talking about the ubiquitous global patriarchy and sexism in general is an entirely separate discussion. That's what, like 5 separate talks, etc. I need to have around. This means that you are going to have to do the work of unlearning sexist ideology that you have been indoctrinated with since birth. And this is especially true if you've come from a patriarchal faith. Entitlement towards women is one of those major points. The ownership of our bodies and our labor exists across all heterosexual relationship dynamics. If you are a man in a relationship with a woman and y'all are planning on opening it up, you need to prepare yourself for the brutal reality of the dating scene. You will likely find yourself on the sidelines, struggling to find partners while your girlfriend is constantly bombarded by offers, especially if she's bisexual and dating femmes. And there are several reasons why, chiefly of which is that women have done the math, and most men are more trouble than their word. Especially in regards to finding a male partner that don't have all of those sexist traits. Finding a male partner that doesn't just respect bodily autonomy, but makes an effort to protect it. Stop fucking with men. Vote against abortion rights.
Yeah.
Stop doing it. Don't do it. So finding a man who doesn't do that and understands and practices foundational consent, doesn't slut shame or have shitty attitudes towards women's sexuality, is an attentive and non-selfish lover, has robust communication skills, healthy and constant self-reflection, does their share of domestic labor. It goes on and on and on. And it's just wanted that primer if you're like, oh, I'm gonna get right into this and it's gonna be great. It can be great, but just beware. So, and another funny tweet, the worst part about being in an open relationship is getting a second opinion on all of your worst traits. If one partner thinks you steal the sheets, that's just like an opinion. And if a second partner confirms you steal the sheets, now you're a sheep and that's fine. So, I've shared enough about the stigma of being polyamorous, but I just want to spend a little time speaking on the joy of this dynamic. I know that this is something almost all of us can relate to. Yes, it may be difficult to be out as an atheist or transgender or queer, but I wouldn't have life any other way. When I first started my journey into polyamory, while I was enjoying it, I was convinced I could easily go back to monogamy if I wanted to. But I now know that being able to love freely and openly is a foundational truth to myself. Not limiting my emotional connections, intimacy, and sexuality to narrow rules laid down by centuries of misogyny has created a life for me I never thought possible. I didn't know I could be this happy, this supported, and this loved. My pool is stunning in diversity, joy, depth, and stimulation. And I've literally wept, I'm doing it now, weeping with joy on numerous occasions. I've never felt more free and supported. And if you're a weirdo, that means a lot extra. So my conclusion is that, and these are, again, lots of my extended polycule, my conclusion is that there are harmful ideas tied to monogamy and exclusivity that have a negative impact on relationships, regardless of your relationship dynamic, whether you're exclusive or open or really casual. It's important to recognize these traits and make efforts to deconstruct them. Even if you were to stay single for the rest of your life, which there's nothing wrong with that. You are an independent and full human being outside of a relationship. You have value and identity that is not dependent on a romantic partner or a deity. There are also profound impacts on your health, longevity, and overall quality of life when you neglect community. And your indoctrination in the default monogamous script may be preventing you from experiencing that intimacy. My conveyance of what I have experienced and learned on my journey of being polyamorous is simply meant to share some new ideas with you and to get you to reconsider human relationships in a way that you may not have thought about before, and to better equip you with the tools needed to build stronger bonds with others. I want to sincerely thank all of you for honoring me with your presence and your time. I also just wanted to say, so all the people who are here, this is my friend Guillermo. We have a date planned for when I get back. Guillermo is a refugee from El Salvador. And one of the community building aspects of especially now more than ever, do you have your safety network? Do you literally have your network in place for when somebody shows up to your house at 3 in the morning and needs somewhere to go? What are you gonna do? Do you have plan B? Do you have your abortion pills to be able to give to somebody who needs them? And this networking with people is how you make that happen. That's the real impact of having an activist community and using encrypted ways to communicate with each other, not leaving a paper trail, stuff like that. So just things to consider. I don't know how much time I have left, but 2 minutes, right? 6:20?
You got a little bit more than that. We can do a few questions.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'm totally open for Q&A. And again, this is the, if anyone, I'll even. There, that's the QR code for the Google Doc if you didn't get that. Are there any questions? Yes, Mommy.
How does your family feel about this?
You know, actually, literally 2 days ago, I was going to come out to my father and I asked my stepmom and she said it's not a good time, so. I haven't yet officially, apparently he knows I'm already at disappointment with him in a lot of ways. I love my dad, he's wonderful, he's a wonderful person, but the rest of the family is very supportive. Yeah, you know, I do love my partners, very thanks. You've met all of them. Yeah, met all of them. Yeah, thank you, your mom. We love them. It's great. Any other questions?
As your stepfather, how am I supposed to love him?
That's what you know. This love is infinite and abundant. It's fine. Thank you all so much. This is something I'm really passionate about. It is having a hot moment. I don't know if you saw the description, but there were over 100 intelligence agents that were fired for speaking about different things, and polyamory was one of the topics that people were fired for speaking about. So I know, right? It's amazing. And if you go back to, they're doing it. It's really frustrating.
So now's a great time to like bring in a former FBI agent in your college.
Yeah. And honestly, it does. It feels like getting together a squad of people who we have all different skills, and it's amazing when they all come together. Of someone's good at this, someone's good at this, someone's good at this, and it's like, oh, they're just a phone call away. We're all part of it. It feels amazing. Yes.
My special nerdism was semantics, when you go to language. What's the origin of polycule?
Yes. So poly meaning many,
Sure.
and cule like molecule. So many in a connection. I think the way a molecule looks. So I got my partners, and they have their partners, which are my metaphors, and then they have their. And again, we're a bunch of nerds. Like a partner you only see every now and then would be considered a comma, because they're only coming around when you're really intense. So. Yes, and yeah, do you see how much you're talk? You copied like all of it. Stole it. It was a great follow-up. Yeah, no, it's really those concepts, they go hand in hand. You spoke a lot about.
Arrow was the Y, and you would.
Yes, and you spoke a lot about NRE. I didn't even cover NRE. And NRE is a huge, overwhelming pain that like for the last couple of years of my life, I've been drowning in, and while it was so fun, I'm honestly kind of glad I'm a little bit out of the NRE because I could barely function, and now I've stabilized a bit, and my life is better now that I'm not feral with NRE. It's overwhelming. You all know that when you first meet someone.
Well, speaking of semantics, what do you think of the idea of where polyamory being a combination of a prefix and all that stuff?
Anyone who's made up, and we get to make up whatever words we want.
Like very fun and rule at the same time.
Yeah, we make everything up. Everything's made up. It doesn't matter. Yes.
One's sort of, one's not poly, but they think it might be poly.
That's a great question. Do you know what a munch is? M-U-N-C-H. So I've never been to one because I kind of already have my fuel established, but a munch is, there are local polyamorous communities that have casual meetups where they just go to a coffee house and hang out, and you just talk to other polyamorous people and drink coffee and get connected. There are a lot of kink spaces that host stuff during the day, or like just have discussion groups and almost support groups with people to talk about deconstructing relationship concepts and monogamy and purity culture. So that's, you know, you can, you can go to a swingers club. I have feelings about swingers clubs, and there's like clashes between kinksters and swingers, and Daryl and I probably talk about that for a really, really, really long time. But then, yeah, just look up your local, what city are you guys in? You don't remember. Okay, huge. You're good. Huge city. So people are like, my town's got like 200 people. Like, it might affect your ability to find other polyamorous. No, I'm sure Atlanta, I bet Atlanta's got an awesome polyamorous scene. I don't know there. Any nerdy group has polyamorous people. Just go to any Dungeons and Dragons. DragonCon, I guarantee you, I bet DragonCon has, I bet if they don't, they're gonna have a panel about polyamorous. Oh, I should submit to, I should submit. Let's speak of DragonCon. Yeah. Yeah, DragonCon, they're all there. Renaissance Festival, the Venn diagram of like polyamorous people and professionals is wonderful, so.
Yeah, it's gotta, yeah, like she said, it's gonna get me outside, that's all I want, that's all my change.
Yes. Yeah. No, Atlanta, I bet Atlanta's great. I bet Atlanta has awesome, non-traditional, yeah, so. Any other questions before I get out of this deep blocker?
Yeah. Obligation to, sort of intersect, destigmatize poly in casual conversation with people who may just mention
Yeah.
it in negative terms or just casually think you might not.
You know, when I say I very openly just speak about my partners, I use the plural. I have the privilege of being able, so I work as an independent contractor. My job is not on the line, right? So I can be open as I want to about my queerness, about my relationships, whereas other people need to be a little more guarded. I just speak about it openly, and I volunteer for Recovering from Religion. And one of the skill sets that volunteering for that organization has taught me over the years is meeting people with grace and compassion and curiosity, and that can be really hard when you're screaming inside. But meeting someone with kindness, even when they're a little bit like, polyamorous people are just ugly cheaters. Like, curious, I'm like, why do you feel that way? Or, you know, who hurt you? It's, I mean, you also learning from the balance when somebody's just being a hateful asshole. It's like, but trying to, like, learning Socratic debate too. I cannot recommend street epistemology enough. Learning how to ask someone questions where they're reflectively thinking on their own idea. You're not debating them, you're getting them to think about what they just said. So that's, you know, being casual and chill, like, well, sorry you feel that way, I have more fun. My brother's also polyamorous, and we laugh together about like being polyamorous, as far as like people being mad about it. Being polyamorous is kind of like eating chips in church, and then everyone's staring at you because you're making a lot of noise, but they all secretly want chips. Chips. So it's a lot. And once you see it, it's like you're just mad that like I'm doing it and you're not. Like it's like I'm having fun and you don't feel like you have the tools equipped to do that. Or you're willing to go and cheat, but you don't want your partner to go do that, which is really the common thing. Like, no, only me, they can. You know, that's what we call OPP. That's one penis policy. You know, there are like some blurred distinctions. I would say no, because polyamory is way more committed. I'm engaged, I'm getting married next year, I'm very committed, my other partners, I may even have a wedding with that, like I may even, honestly, at some point in my life, and I've been doing this for over a decade, I may get to a point where I am ceremoniously married to more than one person. I don't know. And who knows what the legal field is gonna look like for women in the next decade or so. I would say it's not quite the same as casual dating, only that I'm very committed to my partners. I see them every week, you know, without fail. I spend about, I mean, it's hard to balance time, right? My love is infinite, my time is not. That's the hardest part. I would not say, would not say I'm casual dating.
I am. I'm back on the days. My husband passed away 3 years ago. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. Starting there, my major props to you.
It's baby steps, baby steps, and I think I just want a casual date. But should I mention that to them in the beginning or just not, and just date, you know? Do I really need to let them know I'm going to want to date?
More than one person.
Yeah.
I would be open from the beginning. I think being open and honest about any of your expectations and boundaries before you even meet the person is a good, primer. Like, or if you ask them, like, what are your thoughts on exclusivity? What are you open or are you closed? Because then, because eventually, I mean, I'm not assuming anything, like, you gotta have the conversation about sexuality, right? Like, what are the risks that we're willing to have with each other? What are the safety things that we're gonna have with each other? So, yeah, I think honesty is the best policy over anything. I think being open completely and authentic with anything is better than having them find out later. It's gonna save yourself probably a lot of heartbreak. Thank you so much.